when I arrived in Japan, we arrived in the middle of August, actually during the Obon festival. Obon is the Japanese, it's the holiday, it's probably the second biggest holiday behind their New Year's celebration, but it's basically their where they celebrate their family and the dead and that sort of thing. So we went to Obon, and we had, sorry, let me say that in. So when I got there, it was Obon, which is the big festival where they honor their ancestors, and it's where everyone kind of stops work, takes off school, everything, and they go to their hometowns and they spend it with their family, kind of paying tribute to their ancestors. And because of that, it was just crowded, crowded, crowded. So we got picked up in Narita Airport, which is just outside of Tokyo. And we all, bustled into these vans, and we were going to drive from Narita Airport, which is on just outside of Tokyo, and we had to go straight through Tokyo to Shinjuku. And I remember I had just grown up in the deserts of America my entire life, and I'd never experienced humidity. And I got off the plane, and my first thought was, I am going to die. Like, is this what humidity is? I mean, people have tried to explain it, and I didn't really get it, but my best way to explain it would be, imagine you get dressed to go skiing, so you're bundled and you're hot and you're sweaty, and then they put you in a bathtub, and you're just wet and hot, and you want to wipe it off, but it just doesn't stop. And I just remember going, it is so hot, I'm gonna die. And eventually you get used to it. I think after a week, I didn't even notice anymore, but initially it was, wow, it is so hot. But anyway, we get in this van and we drive through the city. And I remember, it was before sunset that we got there, and I remember the first thing I noticed was, wow, it is so green here. I thought that I said I'd come from a desert, but we had trees and we had grass on everyone's lawn. But I remember getting there, I didn't know a place could be so green. And I didn't think Japan would be a place that was super, super green, but it was just so luscious and beautiful. But then you get into the city, and it was incredible. The highways aren't just on the ground, they're on these stilts, just zigzagging through the buildings and everything. I remember we're going through it, and just everywhere you look, there's buildings and skyscrapers and just seas and seas of them. It never ended, and I thought, they make my, hometown of Salt Lake City look puny. Like, I can never go to Salt Lake and feel like it's a city again, because Tokyo was just never ending, and it was so, so beautiful. And I remember it was getting late, and because it was the Obon holiday, there was so much traffic, and we were caught in the traffic, and it got 8, 9 o'clock, and you just see these big skyscrapers right next to the highway. And you're up on the stilted highway, so you're looking into like the 15th, okay, maybe not the 15th, but you can probably see up to the 15th floor. And it's 9 p.m. and they're just still working away. And I go, wow, they are such hard workers. Everyone's still just working, and you pass trains, and it was so cool because it was, it's all the city, but each part is so different than the next. And I go, wow, like, this is so beautiful. And I remember we get there, and that night, and I was super jet lagged, so I crashed. But the next morning we wake up early, and they take us out to a park. And one thing that was really cool is all the old people around Tokyo, not Tokyo, all the elderly people in Japan, and I found out later that elementary school kids are required to do it too. They do something called Radio Taiso, which basically means the radio exercises. And every morning at 6 a.m., the radio plays like a 20-30 minute exercise program. And so all the elderly meet in parks, and they go through this like aerobics exercise program. And we go out there, and there's just dozens and dozens of elderly just all synchronized doing this exercise. As we joined in, I was like, this is so cool. I didn't know this sort of thing existed. And at that point, I left kind of this base, and I went to my own, where I'd be living for the next 6 months at this apartment. And I just remember taking the trains, and it was just on these trains, you're just packed to the brim with people, and everywhere you look, there's people. But the most weird thing to me was getting on this train. I remember thinking, it is so, so quiet. You have a sea of people. I don't know how many people you can fit into a train car. It's got to be 100, in the hundreds. Probably 150 people you can fit into this train car, because you are sardines in there. And I remember being in there, and it was deathly silent. And I just remember, like, whoa. And that's one of the first impressions was how courteous Japanese people were. It was so kind, so courteous. The other thing that really got my attention was that just, every interaction you had, people were so courteous, so kind. And I remember later on we left and we had to take an escalator. And on the escalators, if you want to stand on the escalator, you go to the right side, and so everyone goes to the right side if they just want to stand. But if you're in a hurry and you want to walk up the escalator, you go to the left. And I remember every escalator in Japan, you've got the people standing on the right and then people walking up on the left. And I remember getting back to America being so frustrated, going, oh, like, people are so uncourteous. If you made room, people would be able to walk up the escalator if they were in a hurry. But I just learned, the first impression was how kind the people were. I don't think that can leave me. The defining factor to me of Japan would be the people and how wonderful and how good they are. And it was absolutely wonderful. And I think, man, if we could all be a little more like the Japanese people, what a wonderful, wonderful world we would live in. They were just so great. And that first night we had yakisoba for dinner, it's a dish called, basically it translates to cooked noodles. And you just get noodles and vegetables in a pan and you fry them up, and it was a meal. And it was this realization, for the next 2 years, my meals are mostly going to be rice and noodle dishes. And then at first it's a little bit of a learning curve, you could say, but then you get so used to it. I came home and it was weird not having a little rice bowl with me for dinner. And I absolutely loved it. I think that everyone should go to Japan. It's just wonderful.